So we're gonna get some initial warnings about, you know, the game. I put on colorblind mode because I feel like that's important. This is a super important screen. This shit isn't real. It's a modern universe inspired by reality, but none of this is real. The government has not approved it. Nothing in this is real. Please don't come after us, right? That's legal's statements of saying this game is a game. It's not a real thing. It's a pretend, but it's based very heavily on the real thing. Which is fine. That's a reasonable thing for them to do. It's not so much that anyone is going to believe that it's based on reality. It's so that if someone gets upset and says, "Hey, you based this on us," Ubisoft can say, "No, we didn't. Look, we said that at the beginning." So this is Far Cry 5, a game by Ubisoft, released March 27th, 2018. It is a open world first person shooter set in Montana, United States, a fictional version of Montana, United States. Here's the title screen. So, first of all, in so much as title screens go, in so much as, like, when I talk about title screens, the reason we sit down and we do these analysis is because, like the cover of a book, a title screen is the first thing you experience before you get into the game itself. It is it's the game's foot forward. It is the introduction. It is the dating profile picture of the game, and it tells us what we can expect from this game. And so far, this is a very modern AAA title screen, which is to say, it's trash. This is a garbage title screen. Now, admittedly, that's, you know, my opinion. Part of this is, you know, how does Adam feel about it? So my gold standard for title screens, I'm just gonna go straight up and I'm gonna say it. My gold standard for title screens is the title screen for Last of Us. Last of Us is my favorite title screen so far that I've experienced in video games since I've been doing this. It tells us so much about the game in such an understated, gentle way. Far Cry 5, however, there is nothing understated about this. Now, there's some graphical elements that I would love to call out that I think are fantastic. There's some small touches in this, some things that a lot of title screens get wrong, right? I think a lot of title screens, you can throw together a beautiful image from the game, a nice screenshot, some concept art, whatever. You can put a nice title. You can, if you're not Secret of Mana or like Shadow of War, you can put together a good logo. You can throw that up on the screen, and you can make a fairly artistic book cover style title screen. But you can miss the little things, right? And I think that there are some little things in this title screen that are quite good, that I would love to call out, and then we'll talk about what's ruining it. So I really quite like on the left-hand side of the screen, I really quite like that section. It's a little crowded, right? I think we have a lot of options, but that's okay. That's fine. I don't know the difference between Store and Ubisoft Club, but they both feel like NERPs to me. But I do like the presentation. It reads like a barbecue joint restaurant like menu to me, right? The antlers and the glow, the sort of sun lines. That's a nice logo. The logo design is quite good. I like the somewhere between a topography and a thumbprint texturing in the background. I quite like that. I think that's nice. The font choice is sort of rustic without being like ugly. I like the way it's highlighted. Again, it feels a little like, you know what? It feels like a rustic, like I said, going with the restaurant design, it feels like a menu for a rustic steakhouse, but like a steakhouse in LA, not like a steakhouse in Texas or like Montana, right? It feels like a graphic design agency's application of the aesthetics of a barbecue joint, right? Like it feels a little put together, which is like super, super picky of me, I know. And like very much just because I've seen a lot of design like this, both in video games and in other places. You know, my background in advertising definitely like influences what I think of these kinds of screens. I like it. I think it looks great, but it feels a little contrived, which is whatever, is fine. Most people probably will not notice that. Yeah, I think that it's drawing on like a product packaging kind of vibe, which I think is interesting, but it's doing it in a subtle way so it doesn't feel like off base, really. I feel like this title screen could be really nice, except it also feels like it was designed once and then the publisher fucked it up, right? So looking at this, we can all see what's wrong with this title screen. Everybody looking at this, immediately you can tell what's fucked it up. And it's these things. I understand their functional purpose, but they're hideous and they ruin the design of this screen. They're disgusting. They don't, look at this Far Cry Arcade, the ad looks terrible. It looks like someone took a kind of hipstery bar in Austin, but then South by Southwest rolled along, and now it's hipstery bar sponsored by Ubisoft, right? So this Far Cry Arcade, these ads to like click-throughs, these kinds of like grabbers, these action items, they are for me really fucking up the experience of this screen. They feel like an added on thing. I get why they're here. I would never want to go looking for these things. I would never click through. I would never intentionally be exposed to this content. So I guess I understand why they're here, but I hate them. I think they're just a bad design choice. I understand the purpose, but I really, really don't like them. I think they throw off the design. I can feel this side of the screen was designed by one team, and this side of the screen was designed by another. Designers, marketing, right? If I'm a consumer of this game, I just bought it. I want the game. I don't necessarily want what feels to me like ads for subsidiary content, for additional stuff. And they're doing an okay job trying to model it. Like this Far Cry 5 live event. No, stop, Arcade. Get out of here. Give me the other one. It's trying to fit, right? It's using some of the same design elements, right? Like if you look, the texture on here is mimicked here. The same kind of... Look, it's the same lines mimicked there. The logo is the Far Cry logo, so there's nothing like special about that. But it just feels like... It just feels like a mistake. It feels like it shouldn't be here. This stuff feels like it should be in Ubisoft Club, or like if you want to try a different variation of the game, you want some additional stuff. Don't put it on my title screen because that throws off the title screen as a narrative introductor. So, okay, you want to talk about there are ways to do this. There are ways to include corporately mandated content into your title screens in a more seamless way. You want to know, here's an example from a movie. You may or may not know this. So, you know the 20th Century Fox Fanfare? Everybody knows it. That like, dun-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-da-dun-da-da, that whole thing. So the 20th Century Fox Fanfare was written, at least in part, I can't remember if he wrote it himself or if it was written with consultation, by John Williams. And he wrote it with the intent of it flowing naturally into the beginning of the Star Wars theme for Empire Strikes Back. Like, that was a consideration for that. So there's a reason why when you watch Star Wars, the flow, at least before Disney bought them, the flow of the 20th Century Fox theme goes right into the Star Wars theme with that pause in the middle so seamlessly because it was designed that way. That's very much on purpose. So there are ways to do this. There are ways to include publisher-mandated content this is not how I would necessarily have chosen to do this. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, it's the same considerations, the same conversation we have all the time about publisher versus developer, right? Not necessarily versus in the sense of like they can get along. It's definitely possible, but you need to work really hard to integrate those things together. So these title screens, this use of this screen to give us this promotional content, I'm not into it. I don't want it. I don't like it. Get away from me. You're really fucking it up for me because I want to see what's behind it. If these weren't here, we would be presented with an image of the town we're about to enter. We would get that graphic of the sign with Sinner spray painted over it. It would present to us an invitation. There's some beauty here that we don't get to see because this marketing content's fucking ruining it, right? The perspective, the road leading into town, going left to right, the way a North American audience reads. The titles, there's a beautiful title screen hidden under this. And I feel like we're being robbed by this disgusting Far Cry arcade ad. I'm not into it. You had a good thing and you threw it away, Ubisoft. And that's a shame. Designer who made this screen, whoever creative directed this title screen, I'm so sorry this happened to you. I know there's some beauty here. There's some good design. So at the very least, I like what you did over here. You did a good job with some of this stuff. Before we actually play the game, the music I think is worth listening to. It's indicative of a theme, of a genre. It's very much, we've heard this before. The rustic banjo, the slightly sad violin, the kind of like small towny HBO series title vibe. The kind of lament of the lower classes of middle America. Right? It's cashing in on an aesthetic. It's teaching us something. And Far Cry 5 is not the first game or piece of media to cash in on this kind of like violence in the lower to the violence in the working class in middle America. The idea of rising up against one's government or those who oppress one. Like, it's not new. None of this is new thematically. There is heaps of music and movies and TV shows that cash in on the same thing, and the music almost always sounds like this. It's for us, right? It's not necessarily derived from, like, I don't know that there's necessarily any authenticity in the music and the setting, right? Like, I don't know if this is derived from like folk music of Montana, because it's just like the title stuff over here. It feels reminiscent of a theme without necessarily being authentic in a way that you can feel, right? It's the South by Southwest promotional menu version of this music. And you see it all over the place. I'm not saying it's ineffective, but it doesn't really impart much to me except the sort of Sons of Anarchy, justified, slightly Wild Westy, but it could also be set in the South, like, yeah. So, you know, it's a little generic, but it does what it needs to do. I think it carries the point across decently well. So, you know, I would say without this horse shit over here, I would rate this menu screen, this title screen, much higher, but it's totally spoiled for me by the advert content over here. It's a real shame. So the team that created this, most of you, nice work. Whoever decided you had to put these here, you goofed it up. So that's our first exposure to Far Cry 5. Let's dig in. Let's see what the game is like actually about, shall we?